Good afternoon and welcome back to Buoy 10. Today is Thursday, August 17th, and here is our update. Today we started out with an incoming tide, and then right about 12 o'clock is when it flipped and started coming back downriver, flushing back out to the ocean. And we had a decent bite pretty much all morning, and frankly it was from Ilwaco south to Buoy 1214 all the way on up towards the bridge. Sawdust Pile did well. The church had good fish. They were split both sides of the river, very well spread out, decent bite for just about everybody out there. So there really was no rhyme or reason to where folks were catching fish. However, most of them were caught up shallow, especially on our boat. Our best number today on the line counters was 20 feet, and that is pretty typical because what happens is on these incoming tides, the fish will get a little bit shallower, a little bit higher in the water column. Once it flips, then we start catching them down in the dirt like we did yesterday afternoon in 38 feet of water, 36 feet of water, dredging the bottom. But here we were catching nice Chinook, 16, 20 feet on the counters. 20 was definitely our best. Red flashes again was best, but those are also on our shallow rod, so take that with a grain of salt. I had a couple questions come in about how we stagger our rods. So what I typically do is my bow rods are my shallowest, middle rods are mid-depth, and then my stern rods are my deep rods. And the reason why is because I want to create separation. So what typically happens is that actually our lines are not that far off in difference in depth in the water column, because I'll have, let's say my numbers are 16, 22, 28. Well, down in the water column, they're really not that different as far as depth in the water column itself. So the reason why we do that is for separation, because let's say the bow rod gets bit, the first thing that fish wants to do is flush right back into the back rods. So having that separation of 5, 10, 15 feet helps give you just a little bit of time to get those rods cleared up before that fish tries to get them all tangled. So real quick here, I want to talk about, I know there's a lot of discussion about Tules and whatnot. There's actually a really strong wild Tule component this year, so we should be able to keep the Chinook fishery open through the Labor Day weekend. And I know a lot of folks think that as soon as you see a dark colored fish, it's a Tule. Well, two things. First, if you do get a darker fish that looks like it may be a Tule and it has an adipose fin, has that extra fin on it, go ahead and just let it go. There's enough fish around where you should be able to let that go. That way it's not an issue, because again, we're trying to protect those wild Tules. But if you get one that's a little bit darker in color and is a hatchery fish, the adipose fin is cut off, there's a good chance it could just be a lower river strain fish. We have several different stocks of Chinook down here, from upriver bright to select area brights to lower river like Lewis Glamma cowlets, the nacelle, youngs. We have all sorts of different strains of Chinook that come up here that still cut great. The fish that we caught today were all hatchery Chinook, oddly enough, and they all had a touch of bronze, a little bit of color to them. In fact, the darkest one cut the best. In fact, I'll try and put up a few pictures here for those that are following us on Facebook and whatnot. We'll put the pictures up in the thread so that way you guys can see. But I pulled one of the carcasses out here. Let's see if I can show it to you. There you go. So looking at the head, looks pretty dark. Look at the tail. Real dark, lots of big spots. Again, you would think Tule. Well, take a look at the meat. Perfect Chinook orange. Just because it's a little bit darker in color does not mean that it's a Tule. So again, if it's a hatchery fish, it's a Chinook, it looks a little bit darker, it does not mean it's a Tule. In fact, they want those hatchery fish out of the system, so feel free to go ahead, keep it, because there's a good chance it's gonna cut just like that fish did. One thing that did change here today compared to last few days, I don't know if you guys can see it, but that red tide really pushed in today. That's the first time we've really seen it this strong so far this season. In years past, we typically do not get bit very well in the red tide. I don't know the science behind it. I've been told that there's less oxygen in it, but honestly, I can't say for certain. For whatever reason, these fish do not bite well or like to be in this red tide. So if you do get stuck in it, try and move out of it. Here it is again, if you can see it. Just that really dark reddish brown. So that's our update here for today. Again, shallow fish on the incoming tide, drop them down on the outgo. Don't be afraid to fish too shallow. 15, 16 on line counter. Heck, one day we even got bit really well at 12, and that's still catching Chinook. Just because it's shallow doesn't mean it's coho only. So again, thanks guys for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow. Later.